Hello out there, people. Welcome to our podcast today. This is the Aaron and EJ show. Ask Aaron, Ask EJ. This is Coach Eric Johnson, the brand.
And this is Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source. So, EJ, what's our topic today? Is this our second podcast of the year? Or is it our first one? I can't
This is
remember.
a this is our
First
first
one.
one. We're leading off 2026 on this one, my man. 2026 podcast number one.
All right. So, what do you want to entitle this one?
The process. What is that about? What does it mean? Because I hear a lot of people using that word. Hey, we understand the process, but what does it really mean? People use this word haphazardly as, oh, I'm staying to my plan, the process. And they just use the word without really understanding what it means and the significance behind the process. Because I've heard a lot of people use it, Aaron,
Yeah.
and then 6 months later, it's like, well, what happened to the process? Oh, well, we're going in another direction. I mean, why are you going in another direction? You only been in it for like 3 to 6 months. What's the
Right.
change? So that's what we're going to talk about, the process. What does that really mean? And, what's your plan? What's going on in the process?
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I may not get this right, so you English scholars don't get mad at me, but it's one of those terms now that it's used as an adjective, a descriptor, than as a verb. To me, the process is action, and
Right.
so it's kind of like people. They want to put that label on. Yeah, we're doing the process. We're going through the process. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean other than saying it? And so that's why I'm saying, to me, the process is about what the actions you're taking, not just the title you've given
Right.
whatever you think you're going to do. And to me, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't have to have a title. So
Hmm.
um, that's kind of where my mind jumps at first point.
Yeah. Aaron, it's kind of like they say, well, you trained here, you trained that person. We want to know what their process was, and we're going to do the process. No, it's not. Everybody's journey is different. And I think them not understanding that and just say, hey, I'm in the process because I'm doing something. What are you doing? You're
Yeah,
doing something, but does that mean it just because you train here, you go out and do that, you do that? Well, that's part of the process, right? No, no. The process is understanding what you are doing and will you be steadfast and steady in developing yourself as you move on through not only the 3 to 6, but year after year after year. And you know what? Sometimes it may not be perfect, but you're still engaged in trying to get where you need to be. That's part of the process. And people don't get that. They think it's all about I got to win all the time. Like when I say win, I mean I have to do well all the time.
hmm
I can't take a step back.
hmm
That's not good in my development. If I go backwards, well, maybe you have to go a step backwards sometimes because to get 2 or 3 steps forward.
right,
And that's part of the process.
right. Yeah, I mean, we use the term a lot. You got to trust the process, and I guess I'll give my definition for that. And basically, what when I say you got to trust the process is you've got to trust one the philosophy that my process is built upon. Okay. And if you don't know it, ask about it. Okay.
Mhm.
True. Two, you got to trust the sequence of events that I'm putting into place for us to move through this to get to where we want to be. And you've got to trust that I'm doing the right things, not only physically, but maybe mentally and emotionally with your athlete. And also, you've also got to understand that you're not going to always understand everything that's being done,
Right.
especially in my instance because I have athletes. I might have an athlete a total of 1 hour, 2 hours out of the week.
Hmm.
So it's kind of hard to then have a lengthy sidebar conversation about everything we're doing all the time.
Right.
So you've got to, and part of, I guess, trusting the process, and I don't know if we're getting off topic here,
Right.
is do your vetting up front. Do your vetting, before you decide to engage with me or with you or any other, professional that's going to work with your kid, so that you have at least some initial ideal of who they're dealing with, what their background is, what their track record is, and then like anything else, you'll kind of also learn along the way as well.
Right.
Um, so I mean that's kind of when we're talking about the process and just trusting the process. That's what I see it as. It's the ecosystem that I'm putting together for your athlete to perform their best, and that's a lot of different things.
Yeah, it encompasses a lot. And I think, it's funny you mentioned that. It's like when a player started in our company as a sixth grader or a fifth grader, and I always tell people, look, I want you invested in what we do for 6 years to get you to go to college. We're a college development program. And in order to do that, I'd like you to be here during those 6 years. And here's the infrastructure that we're gonna do to allow you to get to that. Can you stay to that process?
Right.
Or do you think you need to go somewhere else? And oh, I'm gonna try this over here and hope that that gets me to be a collegiate perspective student athlete. And people fall short of that because of what I call instant gratification. And that's not part of being in the process, Aaron, is I need it now, I want it now, and if I can't get it, I'm going somewhere else. That's not a process-based athlete, I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah, and that leads me to kind of say, well, you can also derail or contaminate a process
Mm,
by those sorts of things, by not having, the faith that needs to be, in what's going on to shore it up, to, like you said, looking, at all different other alternatives. It's kind of like, you've got a date on your arm, but you're constantly, looking at everything
looking
else,
right.
or wondering, if the grass is greener on the other side. So you also, it's not just kind of a silo. It's not a kid or an athlete working in a silo. There's other things that can affect the process, even though it's not your process, but
Right.
you can still affect and influence the process. And so you've also got to ask yourself, well, what am I doing to help move this process along? What am I doing that might be hindering this process? And it doesn't have to necessarily be intentional. It could
Right.
be, unintentional. So, I know process is a broad term, but
Yeah.
you have to think about, like I said, I guess for a simple word, you might just say, okay, well, what's the plan? But
Yeah, I
but
think
the
that's good.
again, it's the mechanics of executing the plan. That's the process. Um,
I wish more people would ask me that. What is the process? What is the plan?
mhm,
So they're not going around like a hamster on a wheel trying to understand what the process is.
yeah,
Because I think people don't really understand or know how to communicate that or fully believe that this is the way. Part of the process, Aaron, is working hard in an intelligent way where you can adapt and adjust and keep moving forward. And I think a lot of people are afraid to ask questions or adjust because they think when you adjust, like what do we didn't do right? We did something wrong. No, you didn't. You were trying to figure out is this the correct way of doing something? And maybe it didn't work for your athlete. And here's another way we can adjust to make it work for you. You see what I'm saying? And that has to come from dedication and hard work too. Because if the student athlete is not working hard and not dedicated to the task at hand, the process gets ruined. It's like bad cheese. It gets, it molds, And I think, that needs to be understood too. And I tell people out there, whoever's listening, is that, the athlete must be invested in the process. You can't just walk out of the gym, Aaron, and just go, I don't feel good today.
Yeah.
I mean, can't you work through that?
Yeah.
Can't you work through that? Because you're not always gonna feel great.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, exactly. No,
you know,
I mean, my words to most kids is there's always work to be done. So come in. So unless
right,
you're, obviously, very ill or going to put others at jeopardy, yeah, don't come in. You don't want to make
right,
everyone in the gym sick. But if you got a little nagging thing here, or, maybe something doesn't feel right there, or maybe you're feeling flat. Perfect example. A guy come in yesterday, and I could just tell, he didn't have it. I said, okay, we're just
right,
gonna do a flush out today. So there's always things to get done. So now we got some recovery in to help them move along versus, okay, I'm just going to sit at home. Well, it doesn't mean you're going to get any better just because you sat at home and did nothing.
right,
So, there's things that you can do. You twisted your ankle. Okay, well, you've got 95% of your rest of your body that you can train.
right.
It,
Exactly.
so to me, it's there's always work to be done.
Yeah. I find there's always work to be done, and part of the process is is understanding that
Yeah.
because I think um, many athletes say, "Hey, listen, I don't feel good today, or my body's not feeling right." Okay, let's try to pivot here,
Hmm.
and recovery is huge. People just, oh, I'm just not going to do that. Well, there's exercises you can do or things you can do that can enhance your ability to move forward in your process. Like I had a guy come in and hit with me, and his hands were messed up, right?
Hmm.
Hands messed up. And I said, why don't we start doing some dry drills and get your body moving the way I'd like it to move consistently?
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100% on that. I think it's crucial that people stop and understand or try to understand what that word means, Aaron, the process. And it's broad, as you said, but if you have a plan, it really isn't broad,
Yeah.
you
Good way
know?
to end it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for listening today. Ask Aaron and ask EJ. This is Coach Eric Johnson in 2026, known as the brand.
This is Coach Aaron Thickman, the source. We'll see you.